Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is our 2026 NFL Draft Prospect Show. Along with me, I'm Harper LeBel. Joey Clinkscales, former NFL general manager. He's been a scout at the highest level, personnel director, everything that you would want, and a former player. And our NCAA and NFL analyst, Brian LeBel, join us. And today we're going to talk about a guy that you may not know a whole heck of a lot about, but you're going to know a little bit more when we're done. From the University of Toledo, here's a young man from Tampa, Florida, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Here's a guy that's 6'2". He's a safety, 202 pounds. He could probably add a little bit in terms of his overall musculature and his ability to be able to be just one of those guys over the middle of the field. But he doesn't need much. I'm telling you, he's a separator. He's one of those guys that when you go over the middle of the field, his job is to separate you from the football. And he does a great job of it. And even though there are rules that don't allow for, targeting and all that kind of stuff, the threat of having a guy over the middle of the field that is going to hit you and hit you hard, well, we're going to talk about that right now. Emmanuel seems to have all of that. Joey Clinkscales, first and foremost, he played all 4 years at Toledo. You don't always see that anymore. In a fifth year, if you had the COVID, obviously, this is the last class now that will have COVID exceptions. But give me your impressions on Emmanuel. Here's a guy that not many people got to see on Saturdays, but he certainly helped Toledo's defense, which was fourth in the nation in terms of points given up. He was a big part of that defense.
Yeah, you know what? The fact that he stayed there the whole time tells me that he probably, from a young guy to where he is today, probably grew a lot. And he was able to grow in a system that he was able to improve in, a defense that allowed him to play a certain way, and he continued to grow. Now, as a player, he's a pretty dynamic player. Again, he's 6'2". I was told that he's probably closer to 210 than 202 now.
Okay.
He's at the Senior Bowl, so we'll get a more accurate weight on him here in the next few days. But you're talking about a physical player. He's certainly a contact player. But that being said, he's a lot more than that in today's NFL, in today's football. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to say he's these guys, but they're going to use him in the same way that they use a Emmanuel, who plays with Seattle. They're going to use him the same way they use a Kyle Hamilton that plays with Baltimore. And what I mean by that is he's big enough to where in nickel coverage and dime coverage, he's not going to have to go out. He's going to be a nickel linebacker, and he'll be able to cover either a slot guy or the guy out of the backfield. So if he's in the game, just like those guys are, basically they're in a nickel personnel all the time because, as soon as you add another wide receiver or another two wide receivers, or you bring in, three tight ends, he's already on the field. He's going to be able to play. So from that standpoint, his value to certain teams will be really high. Plus, he's a physical guy. You can see his football acumen is pretty good. You can see him moving space. I don't think he's got great overall top-end speed. I think the speed is good enough to be effective. But the guy is physical. He's tough. He's smart. He'll be a great special teams player because of his physicality. It won't be a whole lot this guy can't do walking in the door.
Yeah, I think his versatility in terms of the size, Brian, I would call him a tweener in terms of like Tyrann Mathieu, for example, a guy who played most of his career, finished it up there with the Chiefs and got to play in some Super Bowls. Not because of his size, but because of his ability. Tyrann could be a safety. He could also play like an outside linebacker and move up and be one of those guys to stop the run and be a 6th or 7th body in the box. I think Emmanuel, in the pictures that you have of him, I mean, look at it. His arms look like he's 7'4", right? Manute Bol type arms, bigger than what he is because, the length that he has. Talk about some of the attributes that were a surprise or maybe something that you were delighted to see in this young man. You go, he's got what it takes. It's not just his hitting, but there are so many other things that he can do well.
He had an interception in the snow that I watched on tape. I can't remember who it was against, but it was full extension. He was parallel with the turf and just goes out, and he looked like a receiver. And I think he's got great body control for how big he is. And I think he's able to use his arms with how long they are and how, he's very good at manipulating his body to get in the passing lanes to punch the football out. I mean, this year he kind of exploded a little bit more so as far as, hey, I'm going to try to create more turnovers. And it really worked. I think he had 3 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles, or the other way around, if I'm not mistaken. But he's very, very good at using his body and his positioning to disrupt, right? And he did that in the passing game. There's a couple instances where he's chasing an option route. The guy puts his foot in the dirt. He tries to get outside. He's able to put his foot in the ground with him and almost beat him to the spot. He just makes plays left and right. He's all over the field. He has a nose for contact, and I think that's something that's kind of a lost art with the safety position. And like you mentioned, a lot of guys are kind of afraid to hit, right? Because I don't want to get a targeting penalty. I don't want to miss this game and half of the next one. But he's very, very disciplined. He's very, very good at lowering his shoulder and putting his shoulder into someone's chest. I noticed that a lot. A lot of the big hits he has are very, very clean. There's nothing dirty about what he does, but he'll punish you, and you're going to feel it as a receiver going back over the sidelines. I loved watching him play. I think he's got a little bit of old school to him as far as the safety position in that regard, and he's got very good size. I think he's got sneaky quickness. He's not the fastest guy, but he's disciplined enough with his feet, and he knows where he wants to go, and because of that, I think he appears a lot faster than he might be.
Some great things right there. Joey, I'm going to kind of turn it a little bit. What does he need to work on? Does his overall strength, everyone needs to get stronger when they play in the National Football League. He can work on his man-to-man cover skills. Does he take the right angles? Are there things that you see that go, you've talked about guys that are either tight in their hips or tight in their legs and they don't move and function. They don't flow quite as easily as some guys. And you've mentioned that earlier. Give me some of the things that Emmanuel will need to work on. I think he's coachable. He was a 3-star athlete that stayed at Toledo the whole time. I think he is a selfless guy when it comes to that. I certainly hope so when he comes to my roster and he plays for my team. Tell me some of the things that you know that he needs to work on, but they're not big points that would keep you from wanting him on the roster.
Yeah, he needs to break down in space a little better, especially when he's full speed toward the line of scrimmage to make a tackle. Sometimes he's a little bit out of control. Doesn't sync well all the time, and will miss a tackle. So they all miss tackles, but he'll do that, and he does it from a point of being over aggressive, not a point of being afraid of contact. So you know what, you can kind of contain a guy that's over aggressive at times, and that's the main thing I would say about this guy, that he needs to play under control better at times, in the run, coming toward the line of scrimmage. Or even
Joey, let me stop you there real quick. So again, for clarification's sake, over aggressive. I want a guy that's aggressive, but not when he misses. I don't want you to miss. Right. I want you to slow down and make sure at least you push the guy out of bounds, if nothing else. Don't miss. Over aggressive means the guy whiffed, and the guy with the ball ends up staying on his feet and gaining more yards because you had a chance to get him at the 10-yard line. And he's at the 2 now because you missed him. Is there fairness in the way I'm explaining that?
Absolutely. But you want to be under control as a tackler. You want to be under control, break down, and be able to see what you hit. Okay. And hopefully be able to drop your hips and explode through your hips into the offensive player. So he's not always able to do that because he's coming up, almost full speed. And by the time he gets there, he's susceptible to a move because, he's a little bit out of control. So he needs to be able to come up, play within himself, drop his weight, sink his hips, and then explode through the offensive player. I'll be the running back or receiver or whomever.
Yeah, well, Brian, he'll be in the Senior Bowl, get a chance to play against some players that are bigger, faster, stronger offensively that he hadn't seen at that level on any consistency in the Mid-American Conference. Is that a detriment against him that he didn't really play against a bunch of bigger name guys and big school guys? He didn't go against Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, Oregon every week. He went against Western Michigan. He went against Ball State. Some Bowling Green. Is that going to be a hindrance in terms of your ability as a general manager to gauge whether or not he's ready to make your roster?
I'll say this. I think the MAC is a little underrated, right? I think it kind of gets lost in the shuffle because they're playing games on Tuesday nights. They're playing games in the snow. They don't care, right? And the guys that are playing in the MAC, you got to love the game of football to be, playing at some of those schools the way you do. And I think him staying at Toledo, because I think, first and foremost, Toledo's the one school that was like, hey, we think you can play. We'd love you to come here, and we think you'd help us win football games. And he did, right? He blossomed there. He got a lot better. And, like you mentioned, their defensive stats were tremendous last year. So I think he knew what he had there. I think he loved the environment. I think he loved the school. I think he loved his teammates. And I think that to me speaks equally on, hey, he's not playing in the FCC or the Big 10 or, the Big 12 or whatever it is. But, we talk about it all the time. If you can play ball, they'll find you, right? And just because you're not doing it at the higher level, if you're doing the things correctly on tape, that'll translate to the next level. And I think, that's what I see a lot of what him says. Go ahead, Joey. What do you got?
No, I was going to say, Harper, I would assure you that watching this guy play, if you looked at him play last year, that he had opportunities to leave and go to a big school, and he chose to stay at Toledo, which kind of tells you a little bit about him as a person. But because watching him play, you're like, okay, he could play at Tennessee, or he could play at Ole Miss, or he could play at Miami or wherever. And I'm sure he had opportunities to do that, to get in the portal and go to these places. And he chose to stay.
Another thing that, I bet when he goes home for Christmas break and it's cold in Miami or Tampa, he's from Tampa, and mom's telling him, hey, before you go out and see your buddies, wear a jacket. He goes, Ma, are you kidding me? It's 25 up there in Ohio. I'm not cold. You got to be kidding me. That carries over, though, doesn't it, Joey, in terms of, hey, he's played in cold weather. And if I'm in Buffalo, or if I'm in Cleveland, or if I'm in Pittsburgh, Baltimore even, there's some places where it gets cold. I would take this guy because it's not going to be an issue. He's not going to freeze up on me. I've seen him play well. As Brian said, he's stretched out. He's vertical, trying to get interceptions in the snow.
Yeah, and again, the thing I'm going to harp on is, especially if this guy's smart enough, which he looks like he is, some of the things he's done on tape, his versatility will be a key factor in the way that football in the National Football League is played today, because his versatility will give him an opportunity to go maybe higher than he did 3 or 4 years ago, because he's able to be a nickel linebacker, he's able to be a dime safety or whatever. And those things will pay dividends down the road, because from a defensive perspective, when the offense change personnel, you don't have to run different guys on the field, because you got a guy like this.
Yeah, I agree. And then especially early on, Brian, he'll be on every special teams. He'll be on every special team. Well, maybe not on field goal, but field goal block. He'll probably be one of those guys that runs around the edge, and because he's got long arms, and who knows, just stretch out. If you get one a year, whatever. But on punt return team, kickoff return, versatility there. And he can play several different positions. As Joey said, if he's an outside linebacker on a 3rd and 12 or something like that, he's one of those guys that can rush the quarterback. Now, we don't know that, I guess, but, an outside blitz, or play nickel, or play in the safety position, or play an outside linebacker. Goodness gracious, you can do so many different things. That's got to be a plus for him and a defensive coordinator who might be rooting for him in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, wherever he goes. I'm not saying he'll be a 3rd, but he might, right, if he has a great combine.
It's hard to gauge where safeties end up, right? Because a lot of times they get undervalued, and there's a lot of really good safeties in the league. But, the versatility aspect that he brings, I think, raises his draft stock a lot. I think, having a guy that can kind of do a little bit of everything, and he's on tape doing a little bit of everything, he can play safety, but there's a lot of times where he's hitting guys moving. It looks like he wants to play linebacker, and you don't see that a lot, right? You see a lot of these guys kind of shy away from contact, but he's the initiator. And I think, you mentioned the special team stuff. I think he's a humble dude. And I think he's kind of probably chomping at the bits to just get an opportunity to get on the field, right? Make a play. And, he's one of the guys that's going to fly down the field and try to punch the football out and try to get a fumble and flip it around and try to get back on special teams the very next time and do the same thing. So, I like what he brings to the table. If you watch his tape, he plays like his hair's on fire all the time. And I think, that translates really, really well. And I think he's going to be able to do a lot of different things, both special teams wise and defensively, for whoever ends up drafted.
Yeah, I think he'd earn his stripes real well if he played on a special teams roster like what Seattle has right now, where they're just all together. They're just a pack of wolves. They're all act like they're hungry, and they're all protecting each other. And it's really an amazing thing to see. And that is one part of making a roster, your ability to be able to do that and to fit in. And you don't have to be taught everything, and you're penalty free, and things like that are really important. Final thoughts, Joey. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is ranked number 6 or 7 in terms of just the safety position. Any chance that he might move up with a great Senior Bowl and a nice combine score?
I would be surprised if he's not like the second safety off the board.
Really?
I don't think this guy will make it to the third round. I really don't. I think he could be a back end first round guy and almost a surefire second round guy. And I would be surprised if we're midway through the third round and this guy's still on the board. That tells me that something probably didn't go right somewhere, because if he's smart enough, which I think he is, and even if he doesn't improve on the numbers that we see, the 4.52, 6'2", and he's let's just say he's 205. The physicality that he plays with, the range that he shows, his football acumen, his ability to line up in a couple of different positions, the versatility and flexibility that he gives the defense.
Right.
Again, I would be surprised if he made it out of the second round.
Yeah, is 6'2". Let's just assume he's 202 is really light. Let's put him at 210 just for simplicity's sake, because I think everybody that knows him and is representing him will say, hey, you got to get stronger anyway, so let's put some weight on. And he's 3% body fat at that. You know what I mean? He's just a lean, strong, long-arm kid that long legs. And Brian, obviously, a couple things that he needs to work on between now and the combine to get his score up. But then obviously, you know, once he settles in and all that kind of stuff, a 215-pound guy, strong and aggressive like that, and he can still run at that same speed. I think Joey's right. You know, he's more of a guy to move up and surprise some people like Mel Kiper than he would be to move down and be degraded because, you know, he dropped down to 4'6" versus a 4'5".
Well, I mean, if you want to question his weight, I mean, he was, I think, third or fourth in the team in tackles the last 3 years, right? He's when he wraps you up, you go to the ground, right? He's a tremendous tackler. And I think that's the biggest issue is you're thinking with weight, you know, being able to tackle a guy, durability, whatever, doesn't have an injury history, tremendous tackler. I think he logged almost 300 tackles while he's at Toledo. So, I mean, you know, obviously he's going to get bigger. He's going to get stronger at the next level. But I think how he's playing as is, I think if he's able to kind of manipulate his body and change some things and improve, maybe get a little faster, stronger, sky's the limit for this kid because he's already really, really good as he is right now.
Well, let's look real quick at just some of his stats. 77 tackles just last year alone. He had half a sack. I mean, tackle for loss, you know, whatever. He's not really asked to do that, at least not from the safety position. 6 passes deflected, 2 interceptions. One of those was for a touchdown. 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. So he's around the ball. He's a guy that, you know, his stats, and especially with what Toledo was able to do defensively. Again, folks, they were giving up 13 points a game. They were the number 4 defense to score against in the country. Yes, they weren't playing against Ohio State and Oregon and USC every week, but for their conference, they were lights out defensively, and he was certainly a part of that. So, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, we wish you well. We hope that you have a great Senior Bowl, that you get yourself ready to play at the highest level and do well at the combine, because Joey's thinking that you might be a late first, maybe a second rounder. He would be very surprised. He would probably take that cigar out of his mouth and want to throw it on the ground, but then he realizes, I just paid about $50 for this one. I'm not going to let that one go yet. Not going to do it. So I'll pretend that I'm going to throw it down to the ground. But we wish you well. Hey, it's been 100 yards of football. You've been watching with Joey Clinkscales, former general manager, former personnel director, Brian LeBel, our NFL and NCAA analyst. We appreciate you being a part of the 2026 NFL Draft Prospect Show. This one features Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo, Ohio. He's originally from Tampa, but he made it all the way up to Toledo, and he stayed there all 5 of his years. He was a 3-star recruit and a great athlete, and you'll be surprised to see him move up on the board throughout the next couple of months. We wish him well. Thank you for watching the show. Tell a friend, please subscribe, and we appreciate you being a part of